Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to see you all. Good evening and welcome to session 1 of our inaugural professional development series. My name is Dr. Tina Wu, and I serve as the University Relations Coordinator with MANRRS, or the Minorities in Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Related Sciences. And I'm joined today with my co-hosts, Dr. Latrina Staley, who's a soil scientist and the DEI Director at the Soil Health Institute, and Ms. Renee Bolden, who is a chapter and community builder with Soil and Water Conservation Society. And the fourth member of our dream team is Mr. Dwayne Matthews. He is on the line here today. He can't stay, but Dwayne, if you want to say hi, just go ahead.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining us this evening. It's going to be a great webinar, and we have some great panelists and a great planning team for this webinar series. So please make sure you are answering or asking questions and interacting with our panelists because you are in for a treat. So sit back, relax, and I'm going to turn it back over to Tina.
Thanks, Dwayne. So I just want to provide some context for this workshop series. It really came about through organic conversations between MANRRS, SHI, and SWCS, and having a desire really to address the disparity in STEM leadership positions held by minority professionals. So the goal of the series is really to provide you all with ongoing and accessible development training to prepare you all as students and early career professionals for positions of leadership to ultimately advance the diversity in agriculture, natural resources, conservation, and related sciences. So with that goal in mind, like Dwayne said, please engage. The series is free and open to anyone. You don't have to be a member of either MANRRS, SHI, or SWCS. The session is recorded and will be available for viewing on all of our host websites. And as attendees, you will all receive a certificate at the end of each session. So again, we have an amazing lineup today who hold a wealth of knowledge. Please remember to ask your questions in the chat or in the Q&A box. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Staley to introduce today's speakers.
Okay. And thank you so much, Tina. Now we'll present our speakers for today. First speaker for today is Ms. Beatrice Faulner, has been a practicing scientist for over 20 years as a forensic DNA expert. She is also a professional life and career coach who has spent the last 6 years helping clients create balanced success. She started her career coaching executives on emotional intelligence in the workplace. However, she craved more personal fulfillment, so she opened her own coaching practice, Creative Solutions Hub LLC, in 2016, a business rooted in high-level personal development. Beatrice feels fortunate to have found her calling as a coach and is passionate about making a difference in other people's lives. Ms. Faulner holds a BS in biology from SUNY at Purchase and an MS in pharmacy with a concentration in forensic DNA and serology from the University of Florida. Our second speaker is Dr. Lisha Odum. She joined the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research in September 2016 as a scientific program director to pursue her commitment to promoting innovative science and interdisciplinary thinking to tackle today's complex challenges in food and agriculture. She is committed to cultivating increased diversity in a new generation of food and agriculture scientists. Dr. Odum has worked at US EPA in the Office of Research and Development and the Office of Solid Waste and Emergency Responses Brownsville Redevelopment Program. After receiving her doctorate degree, she served as an early career intern for the Public Policy Board of the American Phytopathological Society. And in 2013, Dr. Odum became an American Association for the Advancement of Science and Technology Policy Fellow at the US Department of Agriculture Biotechnology Regulatory Service, where she managed a diverse portfolio, which included working with the OECD Working Group for the Harmonization of Regulatory Oversight in Biotechnology. Dr. Odum received her bachelor's degree in environmental science from Tuskegee University, her master's degree in environmental resource policy from George Washington University, and her doctorate in integrative biosciences from Tuskegee University. So with that, Dr. Odum, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be able to share a little bit about my journey with everyone today. And I think Dr. Staley did a great job of providing an overview. Wait, make sure everyone can see my slides. So one of the things that Dr. Staley mentioned when we were prepping for this is definitely talk about our career path, but also to share our story. And as I was preparing for this talk, I looked at kind of the acknowledgments or the journey laid out from Tuskegee to where I am now in undergrad. And I tried to figure out like what piece would be the story. And I think I'll describe to you all the things that I've obtained, but the story for me is that I didn't necessarily start out at Tuskegee in undergrad knowing that this is where I would end up, right? And so for me, so much of my story has been continuing to explore those things that excite me and that give me energy, and wanting to create a difference in the world has led me to all of these different opportunities that I didn't even know existed at the beginning of my career journey, right? So I think the main takeaway as I share this is that I didn't know what I was doing through any of this. I was just doing one thing and the next thing and then the next thing. Some people have a far clearer plan to their life. That's not necessarily how I moved through my career. I was always pursuing knowledge. I was always pursuing ways to challenge myself, but I didn't necessarily have this, I'm going to now end up as a scientific program director. And in all honesty, I didn't know what a scientific program director was probably in undergrad or graduate studies. So I did definitely start at Tuskegee. I was interested in environmental science and I wanted to understand what that looked like. And then that led me to working at EPA, both in the Office of Research and Development and the Brownfield Office. At EPA, I started to develop an interest and excitement around environmental justice and wanting to understand how policies impact all of our population, not just certain groups, and then who are those groups that are maybe more sensitive or need to be more protected. And while I was at Tuskegee in undergrad, I took a course in biotechnology, and I got really excited around understanding how science can improve the ways that we develop food and feed the world and protect folks from pests and protect people and provide more nutrients. And so initially when I got my undergraduate degree, I never thought I would go back and get my PhD. I was done with school after my bachelor's. I was never going back. But then there was always that interest or excitement around the ways in which science and policy can change our world for the better. So while at EPA, I thought, well, if I'm in a federal position, I should probably learn more about policy. I'm in a lot of positions in these offices where policy decisions are being made. So I decided to go to George Washington University, and I could pick any topic I wanted. So I wanted to go back to my excitement around biotechnology. So I thought I will do a project looking at the impact of, or why different regulations are the way that they are in the U.S. versus abroad. So looking at global regulations of biotech and what makes people make those types of policy decisions, what historically has happened, how do they relate to science? And so, again, you can see the story of excitement and interest around policy and science and understanding why people make the decisions that they do. So then while at EPA, I thought, well, if I'm going to stay in these policy positions, I'm in a lot of offices where people are making policy decisions, but they aren't scientists, but they're making decisions about science. So I'd like to go back and get a PhD. And around that time, Tuskegee was creating a new integrated biosciences fellowship. So that was their PhD program. I was part of their inaugural cohort. But one of the things that was extremely exciting to me is this particular program, you had to have multiple disciplines. You had to have 2 different PIs. And so it was also this way to tackle a challenge and not just come at it from one discipline, because I have an interest in complex, tricky challenges that need a lot of different disciplines to resolve it. So while at Tuskegee getting my PhD, I decided to look at the impact of a genetically modified cotton on soil health and enzymatic activity. So I'm pulling together all these different interests of mine, right? My biotechnology interests, my interest in environmental science. Now I'm expanding it to learn more about soil science and plant science. And also while at Tuskegee, UC Davis and Tuskegee had a relationship where they had a Create IGERT fellowship, and I had the opportunity to spend some time in Ireland for about 6 months doing research. And I also, in that time frame, became an American Phytopathological Society public policy fellow because, again, I'm a soil scientist, but I'm doing a lot of research on plant pathology, and I thought, oh, I'd love to learn how policy is like enacted from this professional development space. So I think you see like building on interest in my research, but also really interested in policy, wanting to understand how these two worlds collide. After I finished my postdoc, there was an opportunity for me to become a AAA Science and Policy Technology Fellow. And that takes researchers of any walk of life. Like you could be a tenured professor, you could have just graduated with your PhD 6 months ago. And it places them in federal agencies and allows them to see how PhD scientists can contribute in the federal space. And that led me to be at USDA for 2 years. One of the things I learned about myself through a lot of this process, though, is I'm also a person that needs to understand my impact in the world. I have a series of personal values that are extremely important to me. And one of those is I need to see that I am making a difference. And it was very difficult for me, at least in the federal spaces, to see my impact in the same way. So while all these things are happening, I'm thinking about wanting to provide more impact. FAR is created in the 2014 Farm Bill, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But this new organization that never existed before was created, and they wanted folks to come in and help to design their programming. So then there was a position available for scientific program director. I had no idea what that would look like or what that would entail. And I initially didn't want to apply. I saw the position, I didn't apply. And I had a couple of friends that knew about the organization, and they said, your collection of skill sets would really be well suited. And that's the other part of my story that I hope I can share, is that there are sometimes positions that will use parts and gifts you don't even know you have, and that's an amazing opportunity. So this position has been that for me, in that all along I'm collecting an interest in DEI, an interest in environmental justice, an interest in policy, an interest in science, a commitment to mentorship, a commitment to training the next level of scientists in this space. And in this current position, I get to do all of those things, right? And it's been such an exciting position. I'll share a little bit more about specifically what I do now in our organization, but I think the main thing I would love for anyone to take away from this conversation is that you don't necessarily have to know exactly your path. And very often, even if you do, you deviate from that path. But I will always say your gifts will make room for you. So it's, as long as you are exploring those things that you are passionate about, that you are interested in, that you want to give your full self to, the number of doors that will open for you that you don't even know exist, it's really hard to capture. So I'll just transition and quickly tell you a little bit about what it means to be a scientific program director. So at my foundation, we connect funders, researchers, farmers, and the goal is to pioneer the next frontier of ag innovation. And so we look at ways in which we can enable, through the research that we fund, to provide every person access to affordable, nutritious food grown on thriving farms. Well, what does that mean in practice, right? So we fund across 6 different, we call them challenge areas, but they're just research areas. So we fund work in next generation crops, which means we look at the future for the challenges we have due to climate change, drought, et cetera. What types of crops would be healthier in that environment? We look at advanced animal systems. What's the future? How do we fund aquaculture? How do we look at ways to more efficiently and effectively grow and have animal systems? Sustainable water management, right? How do we manage floods? How do we manage droughts? Again, climate is across this, as it is impacting our ability to farm, produce food healthily. We look at urban food systems. What can we do in those urban spaces? The health ag nexus, what's that connection between health, nutrition, and agriculture? How are we growing our food? How are we making it more nutrient dense? And then finally, I manage the soil health portfolio. We were created in the 2014 Farm Bill. We are a nonprofit 501c3, and the way that we create our funding opportunities is that we have to find a non-federal matching partner. So we can't match USDA or NSF dollars, but we can match funds with different foundations like Rockefeller or Gates Foundation. We can match dollars with state and local entities. We can also find matching dollars with companies and international entities. So we have over 550 distinct funding partners. And in the 6 years that I've been at FAR, and I was one of the first employees, we funded about $368 million of research across these 6 challenge areas. And specifically in my soil health portfolio, I focus on looking at resiliency and adaptation, as I mentioned, looking at ways in which we can address changing climate, how we can provide site-specific decision-making to farmers and ranchers so that they understand how to effectively manage their soil, how we can ensure farmer well-being, profitability, and making sure that farmers and ranchers can grow food in the most cost-effective way, and then thinking about pathways to adoption. We have a number of things that we know will protect our soil, and Dr. Staley's organization funds a lot of this amazing research, but the struggle is around how do you encourage adoption, how do you enable adoption of these practices. We also look at ways in which we can support diversity and inclusion and how we can amplify UN Sustainable Development Goals. So specifically, before I turn things over to our next amazing speaker, I'd love to share a little bit about what a program director actually does. Because again, this was not something I knew before I started this position. So a lot of times I spend time looking at ways in which to priority set and understand what the next future set of research priorities are. We develop a lot of relationships. I spend a lot of time engaging with partners. Many of the folks on this call or on the panel are folks that we would engage with to understand what their research needs are. And then if there's some commonality among our goals, we can then co-fund potentially. We spend a lot of time reaching out to companies and other organizations, understanding what their goals and objectives are and seeing if there's possible alignment. We develop a lot of grants. We manage those grants. We develop budgets, manage those budgets, and then oversee the evaluation of the funded project. So a position like this, you wear a number of hats and you kind of pull on a lot of different experience. And I can't say that when I started my journey, even when I started getting my PhD, I thought I was going to go right back into federal spaces, and that's what I would do. And I think the story for me is, and the thing I want to impart, is that there will be amazing opportunities that might come your way that you don't even recognize yet, and that all along you're amassing this huge amount of skill sets that you may not even know is at your disposal. I'm a huge relationship builder. I'm really good at connecting with people, but that's not something that you think about when you're at the bench as being this skill set. But now I work in an organization where building relationships is 90% of my job, right? So it wasn't something that I thought was this huge skill, but depending on the circumstance, it became something that was quite invaluable to me. So I think the thing I would just love to impart, as I've shared a little bit of my journey, is thinking about all the ways that every skill that you're obtaining, every lesson that you're learning now can be of value to you. And then in your future, there may be so many opportunities that don't even exist now that will exist later, because sometimes the organization isn't even created yet. My perfect job didn't exist before 2016. The organization didn't exist. So sometimes you have to make that next amazing opportunity for yourself. It isn't that you'll go work in a specific place. You may create your own business. You may start your own startup. You may create your own foundation. And that's the part that's so exciting about working in these spaces in agriculture, I think, is that the opportunities are limitless. So I will stop now. You'll have plenty of time to ask us questions later, but I just wanted to share a little bit of my journey. And if you have any questions, I can't wait to the Q&A section to hear what you ask. I think I'm turning everything over to you, Beatrice, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely. Hello, everyone. I am very, very happy to be with you. Thank you, Dr. Staley, for that gracious introduction. You know, it's funny because hearing Dr. Odum's story takes me back to when I was in graduate school. And at that time, I was pursuing a degree in molecular biology and genetics. And I remember y'all being in the laboratory at like 11:30 p.m. at night, just doing these time mating experiments with mice and rodents and sobbing, knowing in my heart, dang, this is not for me. I don't want to do this, you know. Although I had I had the utmost respect for cancer research. I just didn't want to do it, but I felt stuck. I'm like, I'm already in this master's program. What am I going to do now? It was one conversation I had with my best friend, and she heard the heaviness in my voice and in my spirit when she called, and she said, listen, what's the problem? Just change your mind. And literally, it was almost as if that was an aha moment like no one else's business, because she literally gave me what seemed like permission to change my mind. So I just wanted to kind of start off with that. And life is a journey, and it's never, there's no straight way. Just enjoy the ride. And along the way, you're going to meet people that will support you and walk alongside you. So don't worry too much about exactly how you're going to get there. Just keep moving forward. Okay, so what I'd love to do is just kind of give you, so like Dr. Staley said, in addition to being a forensic DNA expert, I do testify in court on DNA results, criminal cases and things like that. But I also am a life and career coach. I got into life coaching, like Dr. Staley said. I was coaching essentially executives at a larger organization that I worked with, particularly in emotional intelligence, because there was a lack thereof, particularly from the top down. So that really interested me in that space. A few things I want to give you, just a few quick and actionable items that you can use immediately for your job search. Okay, I have a zillion of them, but I'm only going to give you about three for this evening. Number one, soft skills versus hard skills. Emphasis on soft skills. So soft skills are things that are not quantifiable. So maybe it's like motivation or teamwork or collaboration, open-mindedness, versus your hard skills, which are things that are quantifiable. So maybe that means, a particular degree or your skill set when it comes to computers or something like that. There's a study, and I will actually send the link to Dr. Staley, there's a study that showed Black workers are oftentimes rated lower on soft skills for no reason, okay? And because of that, it tends to leave Black and minority workers unemployed and underemployed, especially post-COVID. COVID had a lot of, it had a little bit of a butterfly effect. So employers are looking for people who are emotionally intelligent and people who have soft skills. So I'm going to send you that study, Dr. Staley. I think it's a very interesting read. So going back to what I'm saying, soft skills, a lot of people on their resumes tend to be very heavy with their hard skills. My degree in this, my ability to do this, my certification in this, all of that is wonderful. But I'd say switch it up a little bit. Make yourself, it's not enough to differentiate yourself from the next qualified candidate who is just as heavily pedigreed as you are, and et cetera. I always say sprinkle in some of the soft skills once in a while. So maybe that might mean, along your hard skills, you put your soft skills on the other side and say open-mindedness, effective communication, leadership, something like that, just to kind of differentiate yourself just a little bit from the next person. Number two, I would say it's interesting when Dr. Odum spoke about it really wanting to make an impact and having her own personal value system. I notice I have a lot of clients who now incorporate personal mission statements in their CVs or their resume. So I'm going to read you off two clients I have. So with these two clients, one of them had very little to no formal work experience, and the other one was a postdoc. So I'm going to read for you their particular mission statement. So the first one was, in pursuit of work that lets me collect meaningful experiences and relationships, I collaborate with creative designers and developers to bring projects to life. I help brands develop marketing strategies, create concepts, and et cetera, et cetera. That was one. Another one of my clients, and this was one that she didn't have very much formal work experience. She wrote that she's a learner, She's driven by curiosity and a passion for exploring new topics and ideas. She says, I quickly dissect complex problems, transforming them into manageable pieces. I act as a catalyst, facilitating growth and performance. So I say that just to say, don't worry about what you don't have. Whatever you have, you got to work with it. You're not trying to be the next person, you're trying to be your own person. So I don't love the term personal branding. I think it tends to be a little overused, but generate or come up with the recipe for your secret sauce. You know what I mean? Whatever that je ne sais quoi, whatever makes you, you, find a way to package it so it is uniquely you and it makes people want to learn a little bit more about you. Another thing that's pretty helpful that I've been seeing is that you're a strong presence. So let's say you're writing your cover letter, okay? So cover letters, look, HR, they're reading a zillion of them. They don't want to read them. So you have to do something to make yours, you want the reader to want to keep reading, right? And you want them to learn more about you, like, well, this person sounds pretty interesting. This candidate seems different. So I'm gonna give you some ideas of, let's say you're writing your cover letter and you really want to highlight your individual strengths and package it in a way, again, that's slightly unique and maybe even witty. So for example, one of my clients said that he is Johnny on the spot, meaning that he will understand the account. This was for an account manager position. So he said something like, he understands the account and the process well enough to have answers to most client questions without having to punt, meaning, without having to, relay the message or pass them on to someone else. He comes prepared with solutions. He doesn't just flag problems. He mentioned also in the cover letter, he has poise and presence. He's clear and articulate. He can navigate sticky situations with grace. Okay, so that kind of, conflict resolution nowadays is a big thing. So the ability to gracefully navigate sticky situations is very important. He does whatever it takes. So in that, he is a resource. He knows the agency well enough to know who to ask. So even if he doesn't know the answer, he knows who to go to in order to find the answer. So, and one of these, I like this part. He says he has spidey senses. He trusts his gut. And when he knows that something's up, and more importantly, he will communicate his suspicions to whoever needs to know. So if it needs to be escalated, he'll escalate it in a timely fashion. So I say that just to say, really find a way to kind of package who you are and just sell it, sell it the best you can. A few nuggets I really just want to leave you with is, at the end of it, when you get your interview, because it's not a matter of if, it's only a matter of when you get your interview, now you want to get into a space where your actual physical presence in front of that person, your presence is an invisible resume. You want to be super mindful of everything. So, that's another talk. And something that's really super, super, super important nowadays, if this is the only thing that you learn from my quick talk, your reputation precedes you. Protect it, nurture it, cultivate it by all costs, because a lot of the times it's all you have. A lot of times, especially if you're working in a smaller or a larger industry, again, your reputation will precede you. You want to make sure that you can help control that reputation, that narrative in the way you want people to see you. And that's all I have. I am going to hand it back over to Dr. Stanley.
All right, that was wonderful. Thank you, ladies, so much. So now we're going to start our Q&A session. If you have any questions, just please put them in the chat and we'll make sure to answer as many as we can. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Wu now.
Thank you both so much. That was so informative. So there's one question that we have in the chat. It says, we all have the same 24 hours in a day, but many professionals have found a way to maximize their time and accomplish their goals. Panelists, how do you maximize your 24 hours and what are some tips you can give to us? Let's start with Dr. Odum.
Okay, well, I think it's in line so much with what Beatrice shared earlier around the clearer I have become around my, and I don't love the term brand, but that's the best way to describe it. The clearer I've become around the ways in which I want to be impactful, the easier it is for me to sort through what is important for me to do, right? So it depends on the stage in your career as to when you may be able to activate this. I think earlier in my career, I'm looking for as many opportunities to grow, but still there are some things that aren't necessarily yours to do. And I think that's a lot of hard ego work, right? To acknowledge that this might not be the best opportunity for me. The ways in which I maximize my time now is I really think about what are those things that I can provide some value to, right? There's some things people ask me to do. Anybody could do it, right? It's not necessarily specific to the skill sets that I have. So for me, I'm very specific about the ways in which I can give impact. I'm very clear about my boundaries around time. I ask how much of a time commitment something will be before I give into it. And I think the other piece is, like the previous speaker drove home, your reputation. I also think about, like, if I put my name on this, right? If I align myself with this, is this in line with my values? And sometimes it's not that the opportunity is a good or bad opportunity, it's that it's not aligned with who I am, right? So for me, it's a lot of being quite specific and selective as to what I'm going to give my energy to, what I'm going to get out of it, how I can add value, what I can learn. And if I can't figure out something from those things, maybe this isn't the right opportunity for me. So those are some of the things I would say.
Thank you, Dr. Odum. Ms. B?
Sure. So, you know, the question resonates. So the answer I'm going to give today is probably not the answer I would have given you years ago when I was not as senior in my position. So what I would, if I could tell my younger self this is what I would do. Manage your energy, not your time. There is, you know, the whole idea with the law, is it the law of diminishing returns? I'm not an economist, but basically, you know, I was putting in my mind, in order for me to be productive, I need to work 13 hours. Yeah, it's quality, not quantity. Because after hour 8 or 9, guess what? That remaining 4 or 5 hours, I'm producing trash quality work. Law of diminishing returns is a real thing. You work, you manage your energy, not your time. It's not about getting everything on your to-do list done. You want to do it well. I so much rather you aim for quality, not quantity. Another thing, organization. So I'm pretty annoyingly organized. My friends and everyone hates that about me. I may be a little anal retentive, but it's who I am. It served me well. Okay, so it's what I am. Organization is a wonderful way just to maximize your time, your energy, and everything. Disorganization will cost you opportunities. It will cost you money. If you are a person who tends to be disorganized, I don't care if you make that your New Year's Eve resolution, get organized as soon as you can and however you can.
Thank you. Another question we have is, how has networking impacted your career journey? Can you give some advice on how to take advantage of those networking opportunities? And where do you go for networking opportunities?
I'm happy to take this one because I had to grow so much in this space. For me, very early on, networking felt very transactional, right? You walk in a room, you trade the card, and then you move on. And I really, because I'm an introverted person by nature, and I'm a person who likes to form real connections, it's hard for me to work a room. That's not a thing I can do very well. But I remember going to this training once, and someone described networking as getting to know someone and figuring out how you can help them. And when I heard that, the part of me that loves to help and learn and get to know people, I was like, oh, I can network. I won't, and I will never still work a room. Like, that's not how I'm built. And I think one of the things the previous speaker said is, like, you have your own gifts. Don't try to be the other person in the room. So I may go to a conference and only talk to 5 people, whereas a colleague will get 100 cards. But I promise you, those 5 people, I know their children's name. We are going to hang out after, and those 5 conversations will lead to an actual project. Whereas if you work the room and get 100 cards, you're not going to follow with 100 people. So I think for me, the lesson I had to learn was to do it the way that felt authentic to me. Because I think what people really resonate with in networking is that you are yourself. You're not, people can tell when you're trying to just smooth them, and they can tell. So finding the way that you can interact that feels true to you has been the thing that is most important. And as for opportunities, I'm a huge fan of kind of just reaching out. People reach out to me on LinkedIn. People reach out to me. And if they are like, and not just like a blanket, like, can I be in your connection, but actually like, hey, I heard your talk and I would love to talk to you about the work you do. People love to talk about the work that they do if they're excited, right? And so you have to kind of be willing to put yourself out there and ask for 30 minutes coffee chat of someone's time. I would also, though, be like, again, I feel like I'm just piggybacking off of our other amazing speaker, but be very organized in what you're asking people, right? If you do ask someone for a coffee chat, have a little agenda in your mind, because people are busy. And if you can come into that meeting with clear asks, questions, and sort of a structure, they will really appreciate giving you that time. But if you get on the call and you don't know what you want to talk about and you're making them do the work of it, that's harder, right? And so I would say the 2-3 things would be figuring out a way to do this that feels authentic to you, outreach to people, but being very clear about what you want those folks to talk to you about, or have questions and a structure for them so that they can easily interact with you. Those would be my 3.
What I'd like to say, so I would just want to say, just a preface to the person who asked the question. I don't love the word networking. For me, it has an icky feeling to it. I prefer, and it's not, I'm not trying to spin it, but rather than network, think about relationship building. Basically, kind of like what Dr. Odum was just saying. You're not going for the quantity, you're going for the quality. So those 5 business cards that you had, as opposed to the 100 that your counterpart had, again, it's you want to work smarter, not harder. So rather than network, because networking has when people are networking, you can tell. And nobody wants to really build a relationship with a person who's networking. So think more about relationship building and versus networking. So another thing too, when you're trying to build relationships, it's not only, hey, what can I do? What can I have from you? Or can I, whatever, offer whatever you can also. Do they need a speaker? Do they need, a coach, a tutor, or anything for their organization? See how you can help service them as well, and it could be mutually beneficial. So go into it, you're trying to form relationships. These things are going to last a lifetime anyway, so really do the work up front, and then slowly allow it to develop, nurture it, and things like that. Don't go for that quick fix overnight. It's not going to work. Better to take a little time and nurture it, because you'll get better quality product at the end.
Building relationships. I like that way more than networking. Okay, we have another question. What advice do you have for someone that's saying, if I get a very good opportunity, but know that my ability may not be competent, should I go for it or not? Ms. Faulkner, do you want to start?
Can you repeat the question, Ms. Wu? I
Yep.
want to make sure I understood.
Yep. So they say, if I get a good opportunity, but I know that my ability may not be competent, should I go for it or not? So a question about confidence in their ability to perform well in the opportunity.
So I'm going to say to the person who asked the question, I respect your honesty and you're being vulnerable. But I will tell you this, the mindset you're going into, listen, If you're not confident in it, get confident in it. Whether it's study up on it, learn more about it. I think the best way for you to be confident in something or competent in your skill set is to hone it, fine tune it. If it's learn, I would say, do a deep dive into whatever you're trying to work on and to get more confident in. You want to build a mastery. So that mindset of, well, if I get a good job and I'm not, no, that's not even going to be your frame of thought after you get to a point where you're almost at mastery. So don't focus on, should you take this position because you don't feel that you may be, up to par. Just figure out, okay, I'm going to take this position, and guess what? I'm going to get up to par before I get there. Find a way. And don't psych yourself out. There's so many people outside who are waiting to psych you out. Don't do it to yourself.
Dr. Odum, anything to add?
I would add, as a person that will hire folks for our organization, the expectation that when someone writes a job position that everyone will be a master at every one of those bulleted points is unrealistic, right? So the reality is, if they have hired you for this position, it's not because you're not qualified. And so there might be some spaces where I've had positions where if there's some skill I don't know, they plan on training me. Or again, there are all these other opportunities that you can have. Get a mentor that knows how to do this and talk them through it. But I don't think you're walking in at a loss, because these people saw your resume. And unless you completely falsified everything on it, and I'm sure you did not, they saw that you had more of the skills that they need than any other candidate. So you are qualified. You will continue to grow. What will be the fun of having a job where you knew how to do everything, right? You learn as you grow in your career. So this may be just a great opportunity to do all the things that Ms. Faulner suggested to learn, but also they are aware of your skill set. They saw your resume. They still wanted you to have this job. There are tons of things I didn't know how to do when I started this job. Development, budgeting, fundraising, no idea how to do any of those things. And yet in the 6 years, I've become extremely successful in doing it. So don't psych yourself out. You're more than qualified, and you have the ability to grow and change. So you're not a static point in time, right? You will continue to evolve and amass new skill sets. So think about it like that instead of I don't have, but think about it as all the skills I can grow.
Thank you both. So you mentioned talking about soft skills earlier. Claire has a question in the chat. How can students get these soft skills outside of school? Can you talk about mentorship, leadership societies, and other opportunities you have engaged with, and how you decide which opportunities to spend your energy on?
So I would say the good thing about soft skills, you don't have to pay for it. I mean, there's so many wonderful books out on this topic, on emotional intelligence in the workplace, and they touch upon soft skill. I would say, go to a bookshop and see or even go to New York Times, see what what they have as far as personal development. There's a ton of books on soft skills. There's no one that's a magic bullet. They all kind of have the same premise. Just pick up a book and start reading it. Also look at videos like YouTube, for example. Nonverbal communication is also a part of soft skills. People don't realize that. You can be saying something, but your body language is telling you something else. It's not jiving. It's not in alignment. So I can already spot if you're being like unauthentic. So just start reading, pick up a book, start watching, watch some YouTube videos on soft skills, and practice. Practice with people. Don't need to know that you're using them as a guinea pig. Just every interaction with anyone is an opportunity to test and feel out soft skills. So don't get too much in your head about that, because it's something that'll come to you a lot more naturally the more you see it and the more you know how to identify it. In regards to managing your energy, so I have to say I'm highly empathic and I feel everything, and that drives my husband crazy because he's an engineer and everything is A + B = C. I don't roll like that. So for me, it literally is, how is my body feeling? I check in with myself a lot. Can I, bust out this one more forensics report just to kind of get myself to like 3 for that day? I could, but then the gut of my stomach is saying B, but it's not going to have your secret sauce. You're already tired. You're burning yourself out. And that's the decision making, the internal compass that's saying, girl, turn off the computer, go to sleep or do something else. It's not worth it. Really check in with yourself and listen to yourself. Don't try to like, oh, I'm going to ignore this. No, your body is telling you these things for a reason. And it's really important about managing your energy now until you, and then, you know, if you get into the work, when you get to the workplace, you have people who are in their 10, 20, 30 years who ignored checking in, and now there's ailments involved, and it is hands down stress related, burnout, and it does not have to be that way. So you're in a wonderful, powerful position right now because you can set your style of working and just make sure you're incorporating wellness, whether it's meditation, whether it's whatever, prayer, whatever you do, just incorporate something, a daily wellness practice as while you're trying to manage your energy. And I promise you, it'll all kind of just comes together in like a really beautiful symphony.
And I'm happy to share a little bit of the experience I've had in obtaining soft skills through partnering with our professional societies. So I'm a member of Tri-Societies. I'm a member of Soil and Water Conservation Society, right? So there are often opportunities at the undergrad and graduate level to learn more about policy, or most professional societies have an undergraduate or graduate chapter where if you want to test out your leadership skills, if you want to test out your organizational skills, it's a tricky space to be in where you protect your energy, but there are opportunities you can volunteer, right? But just be clear about what you're going to get out of it and what you're going to get into it. Because one of the things I have learned, right, is I didn't always do the best job of protecting my energy. And so the clearer I become about my boundaries, the easier it is to protect my energy. And so there's some spaces where I'm clear about the amount of energy I can give to something, because I don't want to start giving bad energy, right? You can spend a lot of time doing something poorly, right? I think we've heard that, right? So how can you bring your best self to something? So there are lots of opportunities within professional societies, looking for opportunities within your department potentially to have some leadership, depending on what those soft skills may be, right? It may be that you want to get better at organizing some things, or leading a team, or figuring out how to build relationships. You can do all of those things, but I caution, because I'm a cautionary tale, right? And sometimes you're overcommitting yourself and you're not getting the full benefit of the skill that you're learning. So I think it is really important, as Ms. Faulner said, to think about, like, have a plan for yourself. Be organized about what skills do I want to gain? How can I find opportunities to do that? Ask your mentors. If you don't have a mentor, get a mentor or two or three that can help you navigate these spaces. And then, but be very judicious, right? Be very, like, guard your energy like you're hoarding gold. Like, that is, just guard it, because you have so many gifts and the world will want all of it, all at once and all the time. And at some point, you'll look up and realize that you may not be as excited anymore or as joyful about what you were doing because you've overextended yourself. So you're protecting your joy and passion and intelligence, your unique gifts. You have to protect them, right? And so there are some spaces where, as you're thinking about those soft skills, that's probably the strongest soft skill to develop within yourself, is what Ms. Faulner was talking about, being able to check in with yourself and trust your gut and say, I really don't want to do this. That's probably, you shouldn't, well, ask yourself, is it fear or is it a real feeling? Because sometimes fear can be motivating for me. If I'm nervous, I think I should push. But sometimes my body's like, no, don't go over there. And I go over there, and then I wish I hadn't gone over there, and I'm tired and beat up in the corner. So if you can develop that soft skill of really trusting your intuition, trusting your gut, trusting whatever you call that thing, spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, right? It's telling you something. Your body's communicating to you, and it's really important to pay attention to it.
All right, we have two questions I'm going to combine. They are sort of related. So as a recent graduate, what are your advice for career searching? And in part of that, when you're navigating and analyzing job postings, and you don't have all of those skills listed on their qualifications, how do you navigate that? So tips on career searching, essentially, as a recent graduate.
I'll let Dr. Odum take that first.
Okay, so I'll take the piece specifically around like the skill set and job postings because I've drafted a number of these. I think it's a very, there was a study, and I'm sure Ms. Faulner knows what it is, but it's this study where if you are a white male, you feel as though if you have like 2% of experience, you feel that you are an expert. But if you are a woman or a woman of color, you feel like you have to have like 85–90% of experience to be experienced. So I think that there's sometimes ways in which we psych ourselves out. When we draft these position descriptions, it's asking for the moon. It's asking for everything in the world. There is not one person that's going to have all of these qualifications. So the reality is we're looking for a person that has the not only the qualifications, but a good fit for the organization, right? So you could have all those qualifications and get interviewed, and you and the company are like, our personalities, the way we like to work don't match, and neither one of us want this, right? So the first thing is look at what skill sets you do have. Ask yourself, are you discrediting yourself? Just because you didn't get paid to do something doesn't mean you didn't have that experience. If for your church you organize a number of events, you didn't get paid to do that, but you know how to organize events, right? So there, I think so also we sometimes discredit ourselves because we think if it wasn't a paid position, I don't have the skill set. Whereas if you really look at kind of the ways in which you navigate your life, you may know how to do project management. You may know how to do event management. You may know how to do communications or some portions of that, right? Because you've done them in other areas. So I would ask, if you look at a job position, don't just look at the things that you put on your resume as a higher position. Look at your volunteer experience. Look at what you've done in your community. Look at what you've done on your sports teams. If you were the lead of a sports team, you know how to organize people, get people to be on time someplace, give people you know how to run a meeting if you've done something like that. And I think very often we sell ourselves short because we say it has to be the exact same experience in this professional setting, when in reality, it could be a number of skills that you've obtained through various walks of life. And also, as we said earlier, no one's going to have every single thing on that list. That's just not how position descriptions are made. They just write them and say, we want all this stuff. And then you go, okay, this person has like 75% of that, and we really would like to work with them. So if you don't have everything, you don't have to make anything up. You just have to be honest and say, I'm really great at these things. There's room for me to grow and improve. Or as Ms. Faulner said, look at that position description, read up about it, watch a couple of YouTube videos. So for the interview, you can at least say you have a contextual understanding of what that is, and you can always continue to grow those skill sets. Ms. Faulner, what would you say? I think you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me? Well, you can hear me? Okay, great. So a few things came to mind. One thing was, don't be imprisoned by those filters, okay? So when you are looking for jobs, people get really laser focused and almost limited by those filters. Listen, just be mindful of what you're using. I get it. If you're just coming out of school and it's entry level, I get that. But don't necessarily put a filter for entry level. Just leave it kind of, vague and see what comes up. So just don't let the filters put you on a course that can essentially define your entire future. Okay, so just be mindful of filters, not to overuse them. And honestly, branch out a little bit. It'll give you an idea of, even if you're not applying for that particular position, maybe later on is something else you want to aspire to. Dr. Odum made a great point, and I'm going to try to drop something in about transferable skills. So basically, look, if you're applying for a position and they want leadership experience, look, did you coach, or did you coach a soccer ball? Did you coach a soccer team or whatever? Or did you volunteer for a particular organization? That is leadership. Okay. So address it. I'm going to try to drop something about examples of transferable skills, and that'll kind of make it a little clearer. I would also say, when you're looking for a job, definitely find out about the culture of the job, find out the mission statement of that company. You need, listen, it's very rare that I say you need, you need to make sure you're working somewhere where wellness is incorporated and it's trickling down from the bottom, from the top down. Wellness is everything. If you're not healthy mentally or physically, you can't do any job ever in life. Focus on culture and make sure that culture is a good fit for you. And lastly, I always tell people, always have a BHAG, meaning a big, hairy, audacious goal. Apply for a job that you have no business applying for. Why? Because you don't know. Anything is possible. You know what I mean? And you don't know what doors that may open up. So apply for positions that you have maybe just, if you think you're underqualified for it, apply for it anyway, just to kind of give you a little more perspective, just to give you a little vantage point, because you might be surprised at what you find.
Alrighty, so we are getting very close to our 7 o'clock cutoff. So I'm going to kind of take this opportunity just to note that all of the panelists' emails are in the chat. Unfortunately, we don't have time to stick around and do some additional questions. Tina's got another call right at 7, so we're going to let her get to that. But I did notice that there are a couple questions that we didn't quite get to in our Q&A. So we're going to take those out, and we're going to follow up in an email and let our panelists answer those in text. I do just want to have Dr. Staley, if you could pull up that slide with some information on that. So we do have more of these sessions coming to you. So take a look at our website. Our next session is going to be October 20th, and it's about money management, financial literacy, and how you can really make that work for you in your career and in your life. Our speaker for that event was on this call, so we're really excited to hear what she has to say. So go ahead and definitely register for that event. I'm going to post that right in the chat now. And then also, if you scan that QR code, we do have a survey to just kind of help us see how we can improve these events and make them work better for you in the future. So please share any insight you have with us at that link. It's also in the chat. And I just wanted to give a huge, giant thank you to our wonderful speakers, Dr. Lisha Odum and Ms. Beatrice Faulner. You folks shared some great advice, and I think especially my boss has been very inspired. She was sending me chats about how she's so excited to use some of these insights. So I guess I wish I had this advice too when I was applying for jobs and kind of starting my career journey. So thank you all for your wonderful perspectives. And to everyone, thank you for joining us, and to the organizers, MANRRS and Soil Health Institute, and as well with Soil and Water Conservation Society. This has just been such a great team to work with. So definitely kind of learn more about those organizations. We have so many different opportunities, including scholarships, internships, other student programmings, and even job boards and things like that to help you on your career journey. So our websites are also in the chat. And again, thank you all so much for joining us. This recording will be available on those websites as well following the event. And thank you again. Don't forget to join us on October 20th for the next session. Take care.